Welcome to today's radio show. Today we're joining Josephine, Moa, Jenana, Anna, and Evelina. We are going to discuss the very famous movie Dead Poets Society, what the meaning of the movie was, its intentions, and analyze around the movie regarding some questions we have up here. Evelina, please read up the first question.
Okay, the first question is, what could we learn from the movie?
Okay. Who wants to start? You can start.
Yeah, just
Okay. I think we can learn that it's really important to go your own way and not listen to what authority tells you.
Exactly.
And it really shows by, like, all the students, they were told to follow this traditional way.
Yeah.
But Mr. Keating then told them that no, you're supposed to be here to learn to think for yourselves.
Yeah.
And that's something really important, in my opinion.
He promoted the individualism rather than conforming.
Mm-hmm, yeah, exactly. You need to be able to trust yourself also, and rely on yourself for your future, and believe in your hopes and dreams, and
Exactly.
just create hopes and dreams.
And also to be like unique and try something new, as Mr. Keating did.
I mean, if you look at it, the lifespan of people is so much longer by, like, it's evolving. It's not up to like 40, 50 years and longer. It's like going up to 60, 70 and going upward. And other people, like the majority is not in these kind of schools. They're in real, just normal high schools. And they're having fun, and they're finding each other and themselves. And then they're going off to college and still just having fun. And you can see, like, afterwards, every movie, every show, and anything about these, like, rich kids that had to go to these traditional schools. You can see, like, how depressing that is later on them, because they never got to experience something better except for just, like, sitting around and teaching and learning.
Exactly.
The life goal for those kids is just to
work their asses off.
Yeah, and just get out of school and then, like, live a wealthy life. Whilst other, like, poorer people are living a more healthy life, more happy life, even though they're poorer.
Because they see the beauty in life. Because, as Mr. Keating said himself, he was basically saying that they shouldn't neglect their education. It is as important as passion, he implied, as in, he said that the education was noble things that were essential to sustain their life, but what do we live for? We live for our passion, our dreams, and he encouraged them to, like, think for themselves.
To find their passions.
Exactly. We don't live to just work. We work to be able to live a happier life, like find what we want to live for, and that was something that was really strong throughout the movie, especially in the poetry and displayed and such. So, yeah.
Okay. How do you think the movie would play out if we followed another character? What would differ? And let's start there.
Yeah, we pretty much followed every kind of character. Like, if we're talking about the boys, they were it was a dynamic that was played out between the boys. We followed Neil, we followed Todd, and we followed a bit of Knox, and then we followed, like, the boys, how they communicated with each other and the group as a whole. But I don't think the outcome would have been different, because they all had their own struggles.
Yeah.
And it will play out either way. But as Janana told us prior to our radio show starting, that it would have probably been different if we followed, for an example,
Neil's father.
Exactly. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was thinking. The thing is, if we followed Neil's father, it wouldn't have been Dead Poet Society any longer. It would be like why he's so tough on his son and all that stuff. It would have been following his father would showcase, like, it would show how he grew up in, because we know that he's poorer than for example Nwanda and the others. So following the father, we could see like why he is the way he is. You could probably be able to see a childhood that wasn't as bright as Neil's childhood, and he was probably from a more poorer family, and he probably didn't have a bright future. It didn't look bright for him as it does for Neil. So obviously he does everything he can to ensure that his son doesn't end up the way he ended up.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as I was saying before, like that's like just showcasing the depression. He's doing everything he can in his power to make sure that his son doesn't end up equally as depressed as he did. And in theory, that's like what he's trying to do. But in real life, he ends up making his son more depressed.
Yeah, I think it showcases him as the Enlightenment. I think that the school itself and the father are it's kind of like a symbol for the Enlightenment era, whereas the boys and Mr. What was it, Mr. Keaton? Keaton. Mr. Keaton displays the Romantic era, because they were chasing for something else, whereas the school and the father and the authorities were like stuck in this traditional pattern. So we can see the contrast very clearly there.
Yeah, it's like we said earlier that Mr. Keating, he wanted the boys to learn to think for themselves. And that's like that's the thing that's common in the Enlightenment, that you should question things, not just go like, for example, the church. Like if you're Christian, you can't just accept the values, you have to question them. And that is kind of what Mr. Keating is teaching the boys, that just don't trust what the school tells you. Think for yourselves.
Exactly. But I'm just thinking about the Romantic era too. I feel like the school itself was very scientific, like very strict rules, and that is also the Enlightenment. Like the Enlightenment advocated for like clarity, science, and reason, whereas the Romantic age was more for imagination, emotion, and subjectivity. So I don't know. I don't think that Mr. Keating did speak for the Enlightenment.
No. I just mean that you can. The fact that he made them question everything. That you can connect that to the Enlightenment.
Enlightenment
but
too.
He was more from the Romantic era in his beliefs.
He wanted them to see that they to feel something, to not just go on with the same circle.
To create an independent thinking and so
He cared a lot about like passion and following your dreams. Okay, next question. How is the Enlightenment and Romanticism portrayed in the movie? What sets them apart?
I think we kind of talked about.
The authorities were there, and Mr. Keating was the Romantic era. It wasn't like prior to watching the movie, I read the summaries and stuff, so I could get a better understanding. So when I read the summaries, I really thought that Mr. Keating would teach about, here is the Romantic era, here is the Enlightenment era, and he would teach about that. I didn't like, prior to watching the movie, I didn't know that it would turn so like symbolic, as when Mr. Keating stood up on the table, that was a symbol for think of other perspectives, see it from another angle, and when he was doing that class of walking and stuff, that you shouldn't conform, you should have your own walk. I didn't think that it would be that deep, so I think that the movie portrayed it really well there. So you kind of have to think about, because you don't hear in the movie anything about the romantic. You hear about the romantic era, but you don't really hear about the Enlightenment. No, you do that in towards the end of the movie when the other teacher comes in and be like, "Oh, did you guys learn about the realists?"
Yeah, because they
skip that.
they
Yeah.
didn't talk about the realists. They just went through with the Enlightenment and the
And
Romantic era.
Those were the pages they ripped out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want him to, like, what was his name? Keating. Yeah, Mr. Keating kind of thought that if they read the realistic poetry stuff and so on, they would get stuck in this pattern where they couldn't think of themselves.
Exactly.
And the introduction kind of told them how you were supposed to
Understand
poetry.
Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of
read it.
ruined the whole thing.
I think that's stupid. I don't know if they made that up or if it is a real thing.
It's probably a real thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the 50s. It's
True.
really controversial to go another way. And I mean, it's the guy had a PhD and everything. It's probably a real thing. People come out with PhDs and they say, "Oh shit, look, I know stuff."
Yeah, I know how to measure greatness and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that touches into that question about the movie set in a specific time. It was in the 50s, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
60s.
60s. No, it was like released 1989. I read that up.
Yeah,
like,
but
it's-
it was
It was released
earlier.
but it was set.
But it was like
earlier
earlier.
time.
It was set.
Okay.
It was set 1958
Yeah.
because in the beginning they were celebrating 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
that
and
was
you could-
1858.
You could tell by when, not just by the school, but by when Knox went out to like watch the girls when she was cheering and stuff. You could tell that it was like in the 50s.
Yeah.
Okay.